Welcome to Blue Dirt, the podcast that digs deep into the foundation of commercial real estate investing. Unlike most real estate shows that focus on deal making and market trends, Blue Dirt gets into the nuts and bolts of what truly builds long-term value, the building itself. We break down how to spot deferred maintenance before it costs you, why a solid preventative maintenance program is a game changer, and how triple net leases can maximize your investment returns. We'll also explore the importance of strong landlord-tenant relationships and how they drive stability and growth in your portfolio. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just getting started, Blue Dirt gives you the practical knowledge to make smarter, more profitable decisions in commercial real estate. It's time to get your hands dirty and build value from the ground up. Let's dig in. Welcome to Blue Dirt, where even idiots can make a killing in commercial real estate. Today's going to be a short segment because we're going to primarily talk about commercial real estate versus residential, why we love it.
Yep.
And then we're going to talk about some commercial real estate terms. Each business has its own language. And so we're going to just share some of the things that you may hear or see when you're looking at a commercial real estate investment. And then the key is we're going to talk about types of leases and then dive in heavily into a triple net lease, which really is the game changer, I believe, in why I choose and we choose commercial real estate investments over residential investments. So at some point in the future, I'll tell you the story of how I got started in investing, which many people start off with residential. But because that's a common thing that we all understand, we know what a house is and things of that nature. And then the evolution that it took me through for commercial real estate. But so commercial versus residential investment perspective. Well, we expect them both to increase in value.
Mm-hmm. Appreciation.
That's right. And then when you're paying that monthly payment, they both have principal pay down. But the thing that I have found differently is distributions. With 100% occupancy in a lot of my residential properties previously, while they were increasing in value and the principal was getting paid down, I was not getting distributions. The primary difference, Donnie, is what? In commercial real estate.
Well, yeah, it's usually going to be, well, you're saying distributions, but it's also the type of leases in place.
Yeah, well, from an investment perspective, yeah. So the big thing for me has been distributions. Now, the tenants are also very different. The lease type, and that's what we're going to dive into because that's a significant factor in commercial real estate, whether it's a triple net investment lease, a gross lease, or a full service lease. The lease length, meaning most residential leases are 1 year or less, and most commercial leases tend to be 3 to 5 years. And then when you get to more corporate level leases, they can be 5, 10, even 20 years or longer on some.
Yeah, the term.
Yep. Right. The type of tenant, obviously a residential, you're going to typically attract an individual or family, whereas in a commercial lease, you're dealing with a business. So from a personal standpoint, you tend to have more residential is going to be more emotion-based decision-making. Mm-hmm. Whereas a business is going to be more logic-based. You know, they have a business with a specific need for the real estate itself.
And issues, obviously, typically happen when you're there, right? Commercial in the space during business hours, and residential when you're in the space during after hours and weekends.
That's exactly right. And then the property management is a bit different. What would be the differences in property management, commercial versus residential?
That would be a big one. I mean, obviously your communication is much heavier after hours and weekends. It is more emotion based. Even though I like to look at the commercial side, even with two different, when I bifurcate them, I'm looking at entrepreneurs that are kind of, getting started or still new, or the larger corporate groups that you're talking to. And typically those ones you're dealing with a very sophisticated individual who's done this and has many locations under their umbrella that they are, and they're very well versed in the communication and how to read a lease as well.
Right. Well, and the individuals, when they have issues, I mean, if an individual has a toilet that stops up versus a commercial, what's the difference there?
Oh, they're it's an emergency. And when they're reaching out, it's, a lot of issues. I mean, it's just much more motion based. That's all I could.
Well, and to be more specific, I was more saying when a residential person has an issue with a plumbing, they automatically call the landlord or the property manager. When a business has an issue, they typically handle it themselves. Because in their lease, they're responsible for the payment. So they typically will call the plumber. They may call the property manager, but it's going to get billed back to them.
That's right. And even some of them have their own maintenance staff.
It's exactly right.
So there's some that we have that's their first line defense to help keep those costs low, because those people are already on salary. They know, let's get them out of here. Bigger issue, they'll contact us.
That's right.
That's right.
Investment timeline. Of course, you have different types of investment timelines. You have a short term, which might be you buy and flip. You could do what's called a build to suit, meaning you find a tenant. Let's just use your favorite fast food restaurant. Let's just say it is Wendy's. So you find a property that Wendy's likes. Wendy's then signs a 10 or 20-year lease for that property. You're then build the building and then you lease it back to them. That's called a build. You built a building a build to suit. It's to suit the Wendy's tenant. And then short term, I also consider, and the reason why I consider that short term is because most developers do a build to suit once they complete the building and the tenant takes possession. They try to sell it on the investment market. And so that's typically a 1 to 2 year term on the hold. And then I consider anything short term less than 5 years. Long-term investing is a portfolio growth for 5 years or greater, which is what space Don and I operate in. Mm-hmm. And then, so when you go in it with that mindset, Don, when you go and renovate a building or rehab a building, what is the mindset difference on construction when you have a property that you're going to hold long-term versus short-term?
Usually it's where we're spending our first dollars, right? I mean, it's going to be roof and structure, dry in the space. We're typically going to be buying a certain type or making certain types of repairs with the HVAC and electrical. We may overbuild a little bit on the panel. We may upsize the panel knowing that down the road, who knows what we have, but it's a lot cheaper to do it this way today versus add more later, right? Yeah.
And when he says a lot cheaper, you're spending more today, but long-term you're saving the money. So when you do things with the long-term in mind, you don't mind spending extra dollars today because you know that if you're planning on holding it, and most of our holds, we plan for 20 years. So we still do some flips. And when I say flips, 2 years or less, but that's not our business model. We are a 20-year hold. So you're going to hear us talk about long-term investing is how we operate.
Yeah. And there's certainly some repairs that you just need to make just to get to the next phase. But once you get a couple more leases, maybe your cash flow position has changed dramatically, and then you can make the right fix. Of course, everything's, shades of gray.
So real estate investment terms that you are going to see when you're looking online or elsewhere is you're going to see the term CRE. That's just commercial real estate. ROI is a return on investment. It can be return of investment. Cap rate, triple net lease, internal rate of return, IRR, COC, cash on cash. That's also related to a return on investment. BTS, we just talked about. That's a build to suit. And then value add. And most of the properties we buy are
usually a value add.
Yeah. And what does value add mean to you?
Usually it's where we're taking something that has been distressed, something that's been run down a little bit, and then just adding value in a couple ways, expertise of the leases that we're talking about, as well as the construction side. So you're adding that kind of value and trying to yield a pretty good return.
That's right. That's exactly right. So, all right. So let's talk about the types of leases. And this is honestly where we have seen a lot of landlords fail from our perspective on really capturing the value of their real estate. And so there's a term that we use called triple net lease, or you might see it as NNN. Sometimes it's just two N's. And then there's another type of lease called gross lease or modified gross. And then the third term that we typically see is full service. So let's walk through an example. First of all, NNN really means property taxes, property insurance, and maintenance, or common area maintenance, especially if it's in a multi-tenant building. So when you charge a tenant rent plus triple net or rent plus NNN, that means the tenant is going to be responsible for their share or pro rata share of the property taxes, property insurance, and maintenance. And so and the landlord is going to arrive there one of several different ways. If you do a gross lease, a gross lease includes the triple net, the property tax, insurance, and maintenance. And then if you go full service, it typically includes those three items plus utilities and janitorial. And you typically find a full service lease. Let's say you have a high rise building where it's really not it's not suited to have separate utility panels. And so they might have a lot of common area. Each floor has restrooms and hallways and things of that nature. So the building itself will factor into their full service lease a lot of common area costs that are shared in your rent. So when you see a rent factor of, and I'm just going to use dollars per square foot, and in our area, if we say something is $15 a square foot, that's per year. And the way that typically works is $15 a square foot multiplied by the total square feet equals your annual lease rate. And it's either going to be plus triple net or inclusive of triple net. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of examples. So let's assume that you have a lease rate of $5,000 per month. The triple net for everything is $2,000 per month. And let's say the utilities are $1,500 per month. So you have a total of $8,500 a month. You can say that I can say that number three different ways. I can say it's $5,000 a month plus triple net. I can say it's a gross lease, so that's a triple net lease, or I can say it's a gross lease, which is $7,000 per month plus utilities, or I can say this is a full service lease of $8,500 a month. All three of those numbers net out to be $8,500, but they're stated three different ways. Now, year one, it may not matter, but what happens if I do a gross lease? Or let's say I do a gross lease, and let's just say the property taxes are $1,000 this year. And let's assume that I did a $7,000 a month gross lease using the same example. If the property taxes went up $100, meaning now it's the triple net is $2,100. The property taxes and everything else was $2,000. Property tax went up to $2,100. What happened to the lease rate?
Lease rates remain the same, but the margin is going down.
Right. The effective lease rate went from $5,000 to $4,900 because it's a gross lease. So the tenant is paying the same amount, right? They're still going to pay $7,000, but the landlord's expenses went up $100. So effectively, his lease rate went from $5,000 to $4,900. That's what happens. And multiply that by a lot of space, a lot of buildings, and other expenses. You've got property taxes that go up almost every year. You have property insurance that goes up almost every year. And then all your other expenses, landscaping, other things, they just constantly go up.
Every maintenance, all of it just goes up.
It just goes up.
It just keeps cutting into the bottom line.
And so what happens is when that landlord who has a gross lease, and a lot of landlords have gross leases, their effective rent is decreasing every year and they don't even know it. They know that they're not making as much money, but a lot of them don't even know why. So the real key, the real factor is when Don and I buy properties, the leases are the first things that we look at closely. And then when they come up for renewals, not renewals necessarily, but come up for expirations, or when we renegotiate them, we always make them a triple net lease, because the property taxes is not it's not a profit center for us. It's just an expense.
It's a pass-through.
It's a pass-through. So we're just passing the cost through. If our rent is $5,000, we want it to be $5,000. We don't want it to be $4,900 next year and $4,500 the year after and $4,000 in 5 years. Okay. We want it to be at $5,000, and hopefully it goes up every year with the cost of living.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Don, when you do the CAM reconciliation, walk us through what that means in commercial real estate and from your perspective.
Yeah, so we've migrated to, depending on this probably deserves its own couple episodes. CAM reconciliation itself. If it's a new property,
well, first of all, CAM is common area maintenance, and that's the third N. But the CAM reconciliation is all of triple.
It's all the operating expenses.
That's right.
Everything that goes into operating this asset is really beyond the property taxes and insurance, goes into this CAM reconciliation or operating expenses. Of course, there's some expenses that will be outside of CAM, professional fees, maybe your CPA or maybe there's a repair to the roof that you're obligated in a triple net lease.
Well, and what he means by that is the landlord typically is responsible for the roof and structure. So that's not a pass-through expense to the tenant. So if there's a roof repair or a roof replacement, that's typically on the landlord, and that is not passed through to the tenant. Now, every lease is different and unique, but by and large, landlords tend to be responsible for roof and structure.
Yeah, of course, unless it's absolute triple net. Once again, we'll expand on all these down the road, but with the CAM reconciliation, it's actually relatively simple.
Hold on. That's crap. It's not simple. It's simple for Don, because they have the type of system where their accounting is so tight and right. So when their system allows it to be simple for them, but it's probably one of the hardest, most complex things for an individual landlord to do a CAM reconciliation, which is why even properties that Don doesn't manage, he'll have a lot of landlords come to him to do their CAM reconciliation because they're so well suited for it.
Yeah. I mean, the software helps. Doing it for a while helps, right?
Right.
You've made mistakes over here and over there, and you ultimately pay for it. So you learn the hard way. But with a new property, we'll look at it sometimes quarterly, probably semi-annually, because it's new for us. We're not real familiar with the operating expenses. So as we're running through it, we want to make sure that this amount that we've added to the tenant's invoice, we're not outspending what our original budget is, or vice versa, right? So we're monitoring it a bit, but more closely. But in a traditional sense, on a more stabilized asset, it's something that we're doing really annualized. So what we've done is on every single monthly invoice, say it's $100 for just the CAM line item, right? We're not talking about property taxes or insurance. It's $100 every month. And maybe at the end of the year, we've collected, right, $1,200 over that term. And maybe we've only spent $1,100, right? So at that time, we'll do a reconciliation, say, hey, based on the budget that we've spent, we've over collected $100, and it goes both ways. Obviously the past few years have been incredibly challenging, and we were running semi-annual reconciliations really for almost all the properties that we had, because what you don't want it to happen is when you get to the end of the term that you've run your CAM reconciliation, for you to have a huge bill to send to a tenant.
My God, do tenants get mad?
Right? They have budgets that they're trying to operate.
That's right.
They don't want this huge bill. So if you can monitor it as you're working through, fortunately, we just finished our reconciliation in March, relatively on par, which was great, because for those few years it was you couldn't keep up.
The last few years we had some unexpected significant increases in categories. Property taxes always tend to go up a little bit, and so we make adjustments for that. But we could not keep up with the rate of this insurance, because insurance doesn't just renew at the end of the year, so it's clean. I mean, a lot of times there's a renewal in the middle of the year, and in Florida, a lot of times those insurance rates were going up significant double digits, and that really catches everybody flat-footed. And so if you don't make an adjustment mid-year when that comes in, it will accumulate, and the end of the year is a kind of a little eye popper. And what our goal is when they set the CAM for the year, not for the year, but they try to do it so it's not lumpy. It's if it's $100 a month, it's $100 a month. But what they're trying to do is adjust it mid-year and say that way, if it goes up to 120, it's not going to be a shocker at the year end.
All right. Yeah. We're trying to do is not hit them with these blows left and right, or had them different periods. Cause maybe we do a landscaping improvement, every 6 months, and we're trying not to pass it along immediately. We're trying to roll it into the budget and just have it consistent. Once again, for a lot of times they are commercial tenants or entrepreneurs. A lot of times they're trying to operate within a budget too. And it helps them. It does.
So really today's recap is simple. The biggest thing that we have found between residential investing and commercial investing has to do with the lease type. There's a lot of other factors, but the lease type being a triple net lease where the tenants pay the property taxes, insurance, and maintenance is a game changer. And if you own residential real estate, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So that is why we made the switch from residential investing, which we now have 0 residential in our portfolio, to 100% commercial investments. And we could not be more thrilled.
That's right. We love it.
That's this episode of Blue Dirt, where even idiots can make a killing in commercial real estate. That's a wrap for this episode of Blue Dirt. We're here to help you build smarter, invest wiser, and create long-term value in commercial real estate, one solid foundation at a time. If you found today's insights useful, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you know somebody who could benefit from these discussions, share Blue Dirt with them. Got questions or topics you'd like us to cover? Reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep digging deep, stay sharp, and remember, real value is built from the ground up. See you on the next episode.